Good afternoon and welcome to the Global Box, your quick tour bulletin around the world on Adamimogo 107.7 FM. Ido in the news. Federal government reassures IMF of vigilance over global economic changes. Ruto unveils plan to sell state stakes via public offerings. U.S. Federal Reserve boss under fire as Trump renews resignation call. Details of these and other stories in a moment. I am Oluwabiyi Falodun. Now the news. The federal government has told the International Monetary Fund (IMF) that it will keep a close eye on changes in global oil prices and trade conditions and take actions where needed to protect Nigeria's economy and keep growth on track for everyone. This promise came after the IMF warned in its latest review in April 2025 Article 4 consultation that sharp swings in crude oil prices would affect Nigeria's 2025 budget. Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, explained that the government is implementing the 2025 budget carefully, with a focus on protecting the progress made through economic reforms and making sure the economy stay ready. Edun added that the government remains fully committed to managing the economy in a way that keeps prices stable, support broad growth, and improve the quality of life for all Nigerians. The International Monetary Fund has said it remained engaged with Senegal as the West Africa country's Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko promised a recovery plan to clean up billions in debt that were not disclosed by the previous administration. The IMF, a key financier for the debt-laden country, froze disbursement on its programs with Senegal last year after an audit under new President Bassirou Diomaye Faye found the previous administration had understated deficits, pushing its end 2023 debt ratio to roughly 100% of GDP versus the previously reported 74%. In a speech streamed on social media, Prime Minister Sonko said that he would present a recovery plan in the coming days that would tell the Senegalese how to get the country back on its feet. Director of the IMF African Department, Abebe Selassie, said the IMF is waiting to see the extent of the misreporting and what avenues were used in order to determine how the government managed to conceal the larger than reported debt from the fund during an active program. Now moving to East Africa, where Kenya President William Ruto has said Kenya is planning to privatize some state assets via initial public offerings in order to bring in more private sector investment. The remark at the London Stock Exchange, Ruto stated the government plans to start with listing the Kenya Pipeline Company via an IPO on the Nairobi Security Exchange this year, noting that well-functioning domestic capital market could reduce reliance on external debt.
We have equally made a strategic decision to broaden Kenya's stock market appeal to both local and international investors by earmarking key state assets for privatization through initial public offerings at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. We are committed to a structured, time-sensitive program that identifies and reduces and prepares a robust pipeline of key government assets to be privatized through the stock exchange or improved through private sector participation.
Ruto cited plans to partner with the private sector to provide hospital equipment on a fee-per-use basis and said Kenya had raised $1.3 billion by securitizing assets such as roads to raise funding. Kenya has been seeking new sources of funding since deadly nationwide protest last summer forced it to pursue austerity measures and scrap planned tax hikes worth more than $2.68 billion. Ethiopia says it has agreed a memorandum of understanding with its official creditor committee that formalized an initial debt restructuring deal reached earlier this year. The finance ministry in a statement said the debt rework offers reliefs of more than $3.5 billion, hoping that the former agreement with its official creditors would help it seal deals with other creditors, such as its bondholders. State Finance Minister Job Tolina said Ethiopia would continue to engage in a good faith with all its other participating external creditors and seek to conclude restructuring agreement on terms compatible with the country's need for debt relief and the comparability of treatment principle. The Horn of African nation opted to restructure its external debt under the G20's common framework in 2020 before it defaulted on its sole Eurobond in December 2023. Listening to Global Box Adamimogo 107.7 FM, transmitting live from Olojido's Palace, Ido-Ekiti. After the break, U.S. Federal Reserve boss under fire as Trump renews resignation call. Details of these and more when we return.
For many years, parents and guardians have entrusted the academic and moral excellence of their children and worlds in our hands at the Adventist Comprehensive High School, Otwekiti. Why not, if not? At Adventist Comprehensive High School, Otwekiti, we make quality education our priority, and it's been made possible year in, year out by our experienced and qualified teachers, computer-aided learning, conducive learning environment, standard laboratories, comfortable day and boarding facilities, effective transportation system, regular excursions and moral instructions, and more. All these at affordable fees. Your child too can be part of this continuous success story. Get him or her our admission form today at Adventist Comprehensive High School, Otwekiti. Call the principal on 0806 235 0549. Adventist Comprehensive High School, Otwekiti. Here, excellence is sure. Management and answer.
Glad to know you're still there. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel via Adamimogo 107.7 FM. For updates around you and news inquiries, please call our newsroom on this number 0915 786 8095. Now to the rest of the bulletin. United States President Donald Trump has repeated his call for Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell to step down, the latest in a series of attacks that have raised concern about the independence of the U.S. Central Bank. Trump made the call for Powell to resign immediately after. The director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, Bill Plute, said Powell should be investigated for his political bias and deceptive testimonies about renovation at the Federal Reserve headquarters in Washington, D.C. The U.S. president brought side comes days after he sent Powell a letter demanding that the central bank lower the benchmark interest rate, which is currently set at a range of 4.25% to 4.5% by a lot. Trump has repeatedly criticized Powell for not backing faster rates cuts, arguing that the central banker's cautious stance is holding back economic growth and that concerns about inflation are overblown. The Pentagon has gathered intelligence indicating that Iran's nuclear program has been delayed by 1 to 2 years following United States airstrikes on 3 major facilities last month in the region. Defense Department spokesperson Sin Panel, in a statement, said the 3 Iranian nuclear facilities targeted by Washington were destroyed, echoing the president's remark, describing the strike as a bold operation. Since the U.S. sent a group of B-2 stealth bombers to Iran on June 21, Trump has consistently lashed out at any suggestion that the attacks did not wreck the country's nuclear facility. Some Iranian officials have said that the facilities sustained significant damage from U.S. and Israeli attacks, while the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei said last week that Trump had exaggerated the impact of the strikes. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has backed Rachel Reeves to remain Chancellor into the next election and for many years after she was seen crying during the Prime Minister's questions. The Prime Minister had refused to say whether Reeves would remain in her job until the next election in front of MPs in the Commons, during a session in which the Chancellor wiped away tears as she sat behind him. But later, Starmer, in a televised interview, stated that he worked in lockstep with Reeves and she was doing an excellent job as Chancellor, insisting that her tears had nothing to do with politics or this week's welfare U-turns, which potentially blows a hole in her budget plan.
What I will say is that she's done an excellent job as Chancellor. We have delivered inward investment to this country in record numbers, £120 billion. That'll be measured in jobs, created conditions for wages to go up, and we've jointly worked on the spending review, which is very broadly popular. She's done a fantastic job. That's absolutely wrong. Got nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with what's happened this week. It was a personal matter for her. I'm not going to intrude on her privacy by talking to you about that. It's a personal matter.
Starmer added that he was completely unaware Reeves was crying beside him and was said to be puzzled when an aide raised a visible upset with him after the Commons sessions. Hamas has confirmed it is reviewing what United States President Donald Trump described as a final ceasefire proposal for Gaza, noting that any agreement must include a complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from the enclave and a permanent end to hostilities. Earlier, Trump said Israel has agreed to the conditions needed to finalize a 6-day ceasefire with Hamas after a meeting between its representatives and Israeli officials. Meanwhile, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a meeting hosted by the Trans-Israel Pipeline, called for the elimination of Hamas in his first public remarks since Trump's announcement.
I'm telling you, there will be no Hamas, there will be no Hamastan. We're not going back to that. That's over. We will free all our hostages. Hamas. It will not exist. It will not exist. It works together. We will accomplish it together. Contrary to what people say, it's impossible to uproot. It's impossible to eliminate. We will eliminate them completely. Our opportunities are enormous. One force goes down, another force rises. Yes, I know someone else thought their power would rise, but things have changed a bit. The power that has risen is the state of Israel.
The two-side statements reiterated long-held position, giving no clues as to whether or how a compromise agreement could be reached. The European Union's foreign policy chief has urged China to end restrictions on the export of rare earth element and warned that Chinese firms' support for Russia's war in Ukraine pose a serious threat to European security. The statement from European Union foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas came yesterday after a meeting with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Brussels. During a high-level meeting with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Brussels, Kallas urged China to take tangible steps to rebalance trade relations, ensure fairer access to market, and end practices that disadvantage Europeans' businesses.
China is a major economic partner for the European Union, but we must address the persistent challenges such as the limited market access and broader economic imbalances. I also appreciate the opportunity that we get to talk about a range of issues today.
The EU is seeking to improve its relations with China amid United States President Donald Trump's tariff war, which has rocked many major trading powers. United States President Donald Trump has announced a trade deal with Vietnam that would allow U.S. goods to enter the country's duty-free. Trump's announcement came just days before a July 9 deadline before he ramps up tariffs on most imports, one of the Republicans' signature economic policy. In addition to the 20% tariff, Trump said the U.S. would impose a 40% tax on transshipping goods from another country that stop in Vietnam on their way to the United States. Washington complains that Chinese goods have been dodging higher U.S. tariff by transiting through Vietnam. U.S. will place a lower than promised 20% tariff on many Vietnamese exports, cooling tensions with its 10th biggest trading partners days before Trump will raise levies on most imports. Saudi boxing power broker Turki Al-Sheikh has said former world heavyweight champion Tyson Fury would come out of retirement in 2026. Recall Fury announced his retirement from boxing in January after losing the title fight rematch with Oskander Usyk by unanimous decision the previous month. In a post on Instagram, Fury shared a photo of himself shaking hands with Turki Al-Sheikh, chairman of Saudi Arabia's General Entertainment Authority. Al-Sheikh has been a key figure in the rising of boxing in Saudi Arabia, bringing a string of high-profile fights to the country. To end Global Fire at noon, a recap of our top stories. We told you that the federal government has told the International Monetary Fund, IMF, that it will keep a close eye on changes in global oil prices and trade conditions and take actions when needed to protect Nigeria's economy and keep growth on track for everyone. Kenyan President William Ruto has said Kenya is planning to privatize some state assets via internal public offering in order to bring in more private sector investment. United States President Donald Trump has repeated his call for Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell to step down, the latest in a series of attacks that has raised concern about the independence of the U.S. Central Bank. That's Global Box as produced by Olushola Morris. I am Oluwabiyi